What's the big deal?
So this actually, and again, this is a distinction between communism as in the Chinese experience of communism and say communism in the Russian experience of communism. So I think when we hear Chinese Communist Party and we think, oh, China's a communist country, we immediately look at it through the lens of the Cold War and the Soviet Union persecuted Christians. And so it's just communism is atheist. It persecutes religion and Christians are target of that.
All religions?
Yeah. But in the case of China, it's a little different because there's a more complex history with Christianity in China. And that history starts with missionaries from England, from Europe, from the United States that took Christianity into China. In fact, Clyde Cook, the former president of Biola, he was president of Biola when I was there. He grew up in a missionary family in China. And so there's a long history of missionary activity in China and grew a flourishing Christian community in China. Then you get to the turn of the 20th century, you hit the early 1900s, and you have what became known as the Boxer Uprising or the Boxer Rebellion. And this was essentially a group of
dogs.
No, I understand. Like it's a breed of dog.
MMA fighters.
They took over all the streets.
No, actually, it's one of the lamest titles that you can give a group of people. So the origin of the name is, I understand,
is it kung fu related?
It is martial arts related, and
awesome.
It came from the British. Like the British just saw this group of people practicing the martial arts, and they're just like, oh, they look like boxers, and so they became known as the Boxers. It's lame. It's totally
that's hilarious.
Terrible title, and especially it's just kind of like the British couldn't even accurately describe what they were seeing, but they're like, well, it looks like boxing.
So it'd be like if Japan rebelled in some way, and we called it like the Ninja Rebellion.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah, it's kind of stupid, but it goes down in history as the Boxer Rebellion.
Okay.
So anyway, it's hard to describe what this was, but essentially it was this movement to oppose Western influence in China, and it was it was at a time when we're in the middle of what has gone down in history, at least in Chinese history, as the Century of Humiliation, where China, a formerly global power, had just been subdued by the imperial powers, not just of Western Europe, but of Russia and Japan as well. And so you had all this Western European influence, and there was this sense among certain groups in China that they were losing Chinese culture, Chinese identity, and things of that nature. And so they took to basically trying to recapture that. So practicing martial arts in public squares and everything, which they got their nickname. But then when they rose up in rebellion, they started targeting areas that were considered to be Western influence or Western imports, and Christianity was one of them. And so there was this wave of persecution and attacks on missionaries, but also Chinese Christians as well. And so Chinese Christians have existed in China for a very long time, and they've been persecuted for a very long time. And so it would probably oversimplify it to say that this is just a function of communism in China.
There's a cultural.
There's some kind of anti-Western pushback that's attached to it as well that has deeper historical roots, and then that just gets merged with communism in a fairly toxic way.